Today on thetruthaboutcars.com, we're out here taking a look at the 2015 Lincoln MKC. This is Lincoln's answer to the BMW X3, the Mercedes-Benz GLK, as well as the Volvo XC60. I know some people are confused and they've been trying to compare the MKC more to the Audi Q3, but they're not really the same kind of vehicle. This has the same sort of exterior and very similar interior dimensions to the Audi Q5. Part of the confusion likely lies in the fact that Lincoln also competes in a segment that the Europeans don't really compete in. They have the Lincoln MKX, which is larger than this. It's a large two-row crossover. This is the same reason that Lexus recently created the Lexus NX200T and NX300H in order to better compete with this compact luxury crossover. Like the Lexus NX, which is sort of kind of based on the Toyota RAV4, the Lincoln MKC is sort of kind of based on the Ford Escape. However, both Lexus and Lincoln have made some significant changes to those base entries in order to turn it into the luxury entry. This vehicle shares no sheet metal with the Ford, and Lincoln even went through the trouble of actually making this vehicle wider than the Ford Escape, which is probably fairly expensive. Platform sharing is not necessarily a bad thing, especially with the Ford Escape, because it is a very good handler out on the road. Up front, we have bifunction HID headlamps. Those are high beams and low beams that are HIDs, and we also have LED daytime running lamp strips on either side. To help improve fuel economy, we also have active shutter grills on all models of the MKC. Out back, we get moderately strong shoulders, and you'll notice the greenhouse continues to drop as we go towards the rear. So this is a relatively small rear window. It does make rearward visibility a little bit lower than some of the boxier entries. We have these LED tail lamps that wrap all the way around from one side to the other. Although Volvo has announced that they're going to an all four-cylinder engine lineup, Lincoln has actually beat them to it. There are only two engines available in the MKC. Things start out with the same 2-liter four-cylinder engine that's the top-level engine in the Ford Escape, produces 240 horsepower, and then you could go up to the 2.3-liter four-cylinder EcoBoost engine, basically out of the Ford Mustang, that produces 285 horsepower. Both engines are thoroughly modern turbocharged direct injection engines. They're both mated to a 6-speed automatic transaxle, and if you get the 2-liter engine, you can choose between front or all-wheel drive. If you get the 2.3, then all-wheel drive is standard. The interior is a pretty big departure for Lincoln. We have real wood trim on this interior, on the dashboard and on the doors, and the fit and finish is definitely fitting in this segment. You can bump things up a notch with the black label package that gives you a slightly nicer interior. We get Alcantara on the pillars as well as the ceiling. We get slightly different wood trim, and we get a few other upgraded materials in the cabin. When it comes to front seat comfort, you should know that these seat bottom cushions are strangely short for this particular segment. If you're a shorter driver, you'll likely find these seats very comfortable, but taller drivers may find that they lack the thigh support that they're looking for. I admit that I'm a little bit torn about Lincoln's drive selector buttons here, this push button transmission mode selector, but it does have one handy feature. If you're in drive right like we are right now, and you can see the vehicle's moving right like that, we park somewhere and we just want to turn off the car, you can just press the power button. The car will actually put itself in park. You can't do that with a traditional gear shifter. That design choice has also allowed Lincoln to give us a somewhat cleaner center console. You'll notice that down here we no longer have touch buttons for everything. We actually have physical buttons that do light up if we turn on the car. The way manufacturers measure legroom numbers does vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, and I found this a little bit more accommodating than the smaller entries like the Evoque or the Q3. As you'd expect in the luxury category, these rear seats do recline as well as flip and fold forward and backward, and the build quality on the doors is just as high as we have on the front. So we have soft touch materials and we have real wood trim. The MKC is a little bit shorter than some of the European competition, and as a result we get a cargo area that is a little bit smaller. Now you will find more room obviously in something like an MKX if you really needed it, because again that is Lexus RX size, but you can see this 26-inch roller bag fits right in there with no problem. We don't have that much room right in front of it. You'll obviously find more room in the cargo area of something like an Audi Q5, but the difference isn't as big as you might think, and that's because Lincoln has given this a very abrupt rear end. You'll notice that the bumper in the back really doesn't stick out that much further than the tailgate hatch, and that's to maximize the interior space for the exterior size. The suspension tuning in the MKC takes some getting used to because this is one of the softer entries in this segment. If you're looking for the best ride, the most compliant ride, this is definitely the vehicle for you, especially in the models with the adaptive suspension system when it's in comfort mode. Now for my personal tastes, comfort mode is too soft for pretty much every circumstance unless you're driving on a really rough gravel road, in which case it really does acquit itself very well. Even when it's in sport mode, however, this feels a little bit different than everybody else's sport suspension because you can't change the spring rate in an adaptive suspension system. All you can do is fiddle with the damping. This means that unlike some of the other entries in this segment, we have to separate handling ability from handling feel. Because the MKC is one of the lightest entries in this segment, we have 245 with tires all the way around, and it does handle very well in terms of actual horizontal Gs, skid pad performance, that sort of thing. But handling feel is very different from the rest of the competition. We have this dynamic suspension system, which is a little bit softer than the rest of the competition, even when it's in sport mode. Comfort mode, again, is a lot softer than the rest of the competition. That's coupled with a steering ratio that's a little bit quicker than I had expected, and a steering rack that is definitely isolated. That means in terms of handling feel, this is probably my least favorite entry in this segment, but in terms of suspension ride quality, this is my favorite entry in the segment because it does have the most compliant ride. Thanks to the light curb weight and relatively large brakes for a vehicle of this size and of this weight, stopping distances are excellent, as is fade resistance. Performance with this 2.3-liter engine is very good, but we do get more turbo lag than you'll find in most of the competition. That's because most of the competition uses a larger displacement engine in this category, because this 2.3-liter MKC does compete with the larger engines in the Audi and in the BMW, as well as the Volvo lineup. Although Volvo is now moving to a 4-cylinder engine lineup as well, and so they're jamming a turbocharger and a supercharger on their 2-liter engine in order to compete with this engine. And that so-called Drive-E T6 engine from Volvo has less turbo lag by far than this 2.3-liter engine. That's all down to that supercharger that they jam on there to give you better low-end acceleration. The 6-speed automatic transmission is likely why we've been averaging only 20.4 miles per gallon in my driving fuel economy test. You will see higher fuel economy in entries in this segment that use advanced fuel-saving technologies like start-stop systems, 8 and 9-speed automatic transmissions, or variable cylinder displacement systems. The MKC has an enormous price range. It starts at $33,100 to make it the least expensive entry in this segment. However, you can take this all the way up to about $57,000 if you opt for the 2.3-liter engine, all-wheel drive, and the Black Label package. As tested, this particular model rang in at $49,500. Now that may sound expensive, but it is significantly less expensive than the competition. On the low end, this is still about $1,400 less expensive than a Lexus 200T, and at the high end, this is about $7,000 less than an Audi Q5. Even Volvo's XC60, which is generally considered to be one of the value entries in this segment, is about $4,000 to $5,000 more expensive. Slotting in at the top end of the MKC's range, we have the MKC Black Label, which is a very unique entry in this segment. The only parallel to it really is the Range Rover Evoque, because Lincoln has a wider variety of interior customization and exterior paint options than you find in most of the competition. The Black Label package coats the ceiling in Alcantara. We also get upgraded leather doors, etc. However, the big thing about the Black Label package really are the interior customization options. You can choose between 4 different interior themes that are different than the 4 interior themes that are available in the regular MKC. That gives us essentially 8 different interior options, and that's something that you don't find in any of the competition, again, other than that Range Rover. As I said in the drive section, handling is something of a mixed bag with the MKC. Because of its light curb weight, it accelerates well, it handles well, and it brakes well on paper. However, most of the ones that you'll find on dealer lots will feel very different than the competition, and that's because Lincoln has made their dynamic suspension system standard on all all-wheel drive models of the MKC. You can also get it optionally on the front-wheel drive models for almost $700. That's very different than the competition because most of the competition doesn't even have a dynamic suspension system available, let alone standard. The reason it feels different is because dynamic suspensions like this combine relatively soft springs with adjustable rate dampers. So that combination feels a little bit different than pretty much everybody else in this segment. It gives this by far the best ride in this segment, the best highway ride, the best ride over rough pavement, the best ride on gravel roads like we're on right here. However, it definitely sucks a little bit of the fun and a little bit of the feel out of this vehicle. You can put it in sport mode, but it doesn't stiffen things up quite like you'll find in things like the Volvo XC60R design, the BMW X3 M Sport, and some of the other sportier entries in this segment. Something that auto journalists frequently get sucked into is thinking that everybody wants exactly the same thing that we want, and it's very common in this segment to demand the best handling vehicle. I want a crossover vehicle that handles like a road car, I want excellent road dynamics, I want crisp turn-in, things like that. The MKC isn't like that. This does handle well because it's light and has wide tires on it, but it doesn't feel the same way as a good handling BMW X3 or Mercedes-Benz GLK or even that Volvo XC60. Now, I think that's actually a good thing because this is a very different kind of vehicle and everything else in this segment is going after that same mission. Lincoln has gone for something different, but it's not as different as you might think. Again, we get excellent handling, excellent braking, and excellent performance, but the ride is very different than the rest of the vehicles out there, especially because of that dynamic damping system. So if you're after the most comfortable entry in this segment, one of the most customizable interiors in this segment, or definitely the best value in this segment, the MKC is actually your choice. Be sure to check out thetruuthaboutcars.com for daily news, editorials, and of course the full written review on the 2015 Lincoln MKC. I'll see you next week.